What if I told you that hidden behind the stone walls of a medieval convent, a noble-born nun turned sacred halls into chambers of agony? That beneath whispered prayers and candlelight, children wept as holy words became instruments of pain. This is not a legend. It's a terrifying historical account, one that ends in bones beneath the floorboards. If you dare to descend into darkness, hit subscribe now, because what lies ahead may never let you sleep again. Elizabeth of Palatinate was born into power. A daughter of the electorate, raised among velvet and silver crosses. Her world was one of prestige, cloaked in piety. But even as a child, there was something off. Her favorite toys were small wooden effigies she'd bind in cloth and stab with needles. When her nursemaid died, mysteriously, eyes wide in terror, whispers began. But no one dared speak them aloud. Speak. She entered the convent of St. Aegtia at 15, by 17, she had become its spiritual head, known for her discipline and divine fervor. Students were sent from noble families to be shaped by her guidance. What their parents didn't know was that she believed suffering was the only true form of devotion, and she was more than willing to teach it. The first lesson was given to a girl named Lotte. She had spoken during prayer. For this, Elizabeth led her into a small stone chamber. What happened next was only heard a single scream cut short. When Elle returned, her eyes avoided the light. Her steps were uneven. She was never the same. Elizabeth kept a small iron box under her bed. Inside, spikes, cords, and a Bible annotated in red ink. She claimed they were tools of purification. Her methods grew stranger. She would starve students for days, then force them to recite scriptures until they fainted. If they forgot a line, her thin, pale hands would tighten around their throats with unnatural strength. At night, the convent echoed with hollow weeping. But the townsfolk said nothing. After all, what was a little discipline in God's house? A few even praised her for maintaining order. They didn't see the bruises hidden beneath the habits, or smell the iron in the prayer room air. One winter, a student named Maria tried to escape. She was caught at the edge of the woods, barefoot, bleeding, her nightgown torn. Elizabeth ordered her to be baptized anew. What followed was an icy ritual that left Maria unconscious for days and nearly dead. When she awoke, she called Elizabeth the burning angel. A traveling friar, Father Matthias, visited the convent in spring. He noted the nervous glances, the stiff greetings. When he questioned the nuns, their answers were practiced identical. Only the youngest girl, a mute orphan named Elsa, dared to leave a clue, a drawing shoved into his palm. It showed a woman's face twisted in rage, standing above a pit of flames. Father Matthias began watching. At dusk, he saw Elizabeth enter the catacombs beneath the convent. She stayed for hours. One night, he followed, quiet, careful. What he found were rooms carved in stone, lit by flickering candles, with chains bolted to the walls, and blood. So much blood. In one corner he found a wooden kneeler, its surface embedded With nails. The Bible placed atop it. Was soaked unreadable. But beside it lay something worse, a ledger. Each page listed names. Some were crossed out. Some were marked with symbols. All were children. All were gone. Father Matthias left the convent before dawn, but sleep would not find him. 4 weeks, he studied the names in the ledger, visiting nearby villages to ask questions. No one knew where the children had gone. Some families had received cryptic letters, claims of illness, of sudden death, but none had seen the bodies. None had dared to demand answers. Back at the convent, Elizabeth intensified her rituals. She declared a holy season of reckoning, claiming God demanded purification. Students were isolated, stripped of comforts, made to kneel for hours on raw stone. They were forbidden to speak, forbidden to dream. And if one disobeyed, Elizabeth made sure the others watched her punishment. Helena, the daughter of a baron, was next. She had whispered a prayer in Latin incorrectly. That night, she was dragged to the cellars. The other girls heard only two things, chanting and metal scraping against stone. Days later, Helena returned with bandaged hands. She never wrote again. The nuns feared Elizabeth. But they feared something else more. What would happen if they spoke out? One sister, Agnes, tried. She confessed her doubts in the confessional. The next morning, she was found in the garden. Well floating, face down, eyes open toward the sky. Elizabeth called it a tragic accident. No one questioned her. Father Matthias returned, this time with a forged invitation for a second inspection. Elizabeth welcomed him with thinly veiled contempt. "We're always grateful for guidance," she said. Her voice was soft, her eyes like winter glass. That night he found the chapel doors bolted from within. He bribed a servant to lead him into the crypt, stained with layers of blood. On the walls, drawings of angels with knives, 4 wings. And Elizabeth. She was gone. She had vanished. No carriage tracks, no witnesses. Only her personal Bible remained open on the altar, soaked in wax and blood. A single verse was underlined. "I will show you the way, even through fire." The survivors were taken to the bishopric for care. Many couldn't speak. Those who could told stories of punishments masked as penance nails driven beneath fingernails for impure thoughts. Heads forced under freezing water during midnight confessions. Their bodies bore proof. So did the drawings Elsa had hidden in the folds of her blanket. One image caught the bishop's attention. It showed Elizabeth standing over a pit. Her hands stretched skyward, blood cascading from her palms like sacred water. Below her, dozens of faceless figures reached up in agony. It was not a child's imagination. It was memory. The church had no choice but to act. A decree was issued declaring Elizabeth a heretic and fugitive. Her family protested, called it slander, claimed she was a victim of jealous clergy. But among the nobility, quiet fear took root. If even a nun could be a monster, who else? For months, rumors spiraled. Elizabeth had escaped to France cloaked as a widow. She'd joined a cult in the Black Forest. She'd been killed by her own disciples. None could be confirmed. But then months later, a hunter stumbled upon a hidden chapel deep within the woods near Mainz. The structure was small, half buried in earth and vines. Inside, decayed tapestries, burnt candles, and a single body draped in black cloth. It had no face left to identify, but clutched in its hand was a rosary etched with the Palatinate crest. In blood, 3 Latin words had been smeared on the wall. Sanguis. Lux, redemptio. Blood. Light, redemption. The church buried the body in secret. No rites, no name, just a stone slab. But the whispers never stopped. Farmers near Mainz claimed they still heard hymns at night from the ruined chapel. Children said they saw a woman in gray watching from the woods, her veil fluttering, though there was no wind. Years passed, but the pain she left behind didn't fade. Helena never recovered. She wandered her family estate, reciting verses backwards, drawing angels with broken wings on every surface. Elsa, the mute girl, grew into a woman of silence. But one night, she too disappeared, leaving behind a single page from Elizabeth's ledger. Freshly written, Father Matthias was promoted within the church, but he never returned to the convent. He died with his crucifix gripped so tightly it left scars on his palms. Before his final breath, he muttered, "We thought she was a servant of God, but she made herself something else." Centuries later, during a restoration of the ruins, a team uncovered another hidden room below the catacombs. It held only one thing, a small statue of the Virgin, its eyes gouged out. Beneath it, carved into the stone, were the words, "Deliver us not from evil. Let us be reborn through it." The inscription shook historians. It didn't match any known scripture, at least not from the Bible. Some scholars suggested it was part of a lost doctrine, something Elizabeth may have written herself. Others insisted it was the work of a devote or a cult. The theory of the Grey Sisterhood emerged. An underground sect said to have formed after Elizabeth's disappearance, composed of women who believed suffering unlocked spiritual transcendence. Their motto: pain purifies, silence sanctifies. Over the next few decades, similar convents across Europe reported bizarre incidents. Nuns vanishing. Children found with strange marks on their skin. In one case, a chapel collapsed during Mass, revealing a basement lined with shackles. The name Elizabeth was etched into the altar's underside. But no conclusive evidence ever linked her to those events. She remained a myth, a cautionary tale, whispered to girls in cloisters. Obey, or the sadistic nun will return for you. Yet to the families who lost their daughters, she was no myth. She was a wound history refused to heal. In 1813, a German physician named Dr. William Coyd claimed he'd found a diary believed to be Elizabeth's. It described detailed rituals involving fasting, flagellation, and visions of burning angels. He presented the text to a university. Days later, he was found dead in his study. His eyes gouged just like the Virgin statue. The diary vanished. No records remained except a torn page with a phrase written in iron gall ink. Through pain, we become immaculate. Whether it was hers or not. The handwriting matched the ledger found centuries before. The ruins of St. Agdia still stand barely. Locals refuse to enter. Tourists visit, but most don't stay past sunset. Some claim to hear chanting underground. Others speak of a figure watching from the old bell tower. Her habit fluttering, though there is no breeze. A local girl named Anukika once stayed overnight as part of a dare. Her friends left at midnight, but she remained. The next morning, they found her outside the crypt door barefoot and muttering the Lord's Prayer backward. She had carved a single word into her arm with a rusted nail. Elizabeth. Modern theologians struggle with Elizabeth's legacy. Was she insane, possessed, or simply a woman who used the veil of God to justify her appetite for power? Perhaps it's all of the above. Or perhaps she tapped into something older than faith itself. But one thing is certain: those who get too close to her story often pay a price. Some say she's still watching, still choosing, that her spirit wanders the ruined convent, waiting for someone to open the right door, to kneel, to bleed, to believe. Elsa's ledger page, the one left behind when she vanished, was studied under ultraviolet light. It revealed faint traces of symbols not visible to the naked eye. One resembled an inverted cross wrapped in thorns. Another looked like a child's face, weeping blood. Some believe Elizabeth never meant to escape justice. That she planned her vanishing all along. A ritual, a sacrifice, perhaps even a transformation. As if she believed death would not be the end, but a doorway. A recently uncovered confession from an anonymous 17th-century nun stated, "We did not follow Elizabeth. She followed something else. Something that whispered in the dark and wore the face of God." The document was burned soon after being read aloud. Even now, artifacts believed to be linked to Elizabeth circulate among collectors. A cracked rosary said to cause hallucinations, a page of Latin prayers that bleeds when lit by candle light. Most are hoaxes, but not all. One historian went mad after acquiring a supposed copy of her personal Bible. He drowned in holy water. A team of paranormal researchers entered the ruins of St. Egidia in 2019. They streamed live for 6 hours. The final 30 minutes were corrupted. When the footage was restored, only a single frame remained: a blurred figure in a nun's habit standing directly behind the cameraman. There's an enduring silence around her tale. A refusal by the church to acknowledge the depths of her depravity. Perhaps it's shame. Perhaps it's fear. Or perhaps it's because some believe she was not working alone. In the margins of the bishop's archived report on the convent raid, a faded note reads, "There are others." No context, no signature. Just those 3 words, enough to unsettle even the most faithful archivists. The convent site is now state protected. No excavations are allowed without government oversight. But one anonymous drone operator captured footage of a figure kneeling at the altar at midnight. The figure never moved. The footage was removed by morning. Some say the children still wander the woods nearby, lost, voiceless, waiting. Others say their spirits cling to the walls of the crypt, bound not by chains but by prayers. They were never allowed to finish. And in the darkest hours, when no one is watching, a voice is said to echo through the stone. Let the innocent suffer. Let their pain cleanse the world. Whether it's wind, memory, or something far worse, no one dares to answer back. The church never canonized the victims. Their names were quietly erased from registries. Their families compensated with silence and veiled threats. The records of Saint Ogygia were sealed in the Vatican archives, classified as doctrinal anomalies. But truth has a way of seeping through stone. Every so often, a document surfaces, a confession, a testimony, a scratched name in an ancient wall, enough to remind the world that Elizabeth was real and that her darkness wasn't buried, just hidden. Psychologists today study her case as one of the earliest known instances of spiritual sadism. But many also argue that what she practiced wasn't mere madness. It was systematic, ritualistic, intentional. Some researchers believe Elizabeth was not just torturing. She was experimenting, testing thresholds of pain and obedience, mapping how much agony it took to break the soul and replace it with faith. Her legacy echoes in whispers across religious institutions, in debates on corporal punishment, in the ethics of penance. But her most terrifying contribution was the idea that pain could be sacred, that salvation required suffering. In modern Germany, the ruins of St. Egidia draw pilgrims, some seeking history, others something darker. Graffiti marks the crypt walls now. I believe her blood runs still. Make me clean. One priest tasked with blessing the site in 2007 refused to complete the ritual. He left mid-prayer, trembling, whispering. Something answered. He was defrocked shortly after. The locals, especially the elderly, avoid the area after dark. Some place bread and salt at their doors on the anniversary of the raid. Others light candles for the missing girls, but never say their names aloud. Names have power, they say. So does memory. Elizabeth of Palatinate was never caught, never tried, never punished in the eyes of man. But history perhaps is her slow execution. A record not of justice but of warning. The horror she inflicted lives on, not in the screams but in the silence that followed. In the way institutions look away when wolves wear holy robes, in how belief can be weaponized against the weak. We are left with questions. What would have happened? If someone had spoken up earlier? If fear hadn't won? If faith hadn't blinded? But most chilling of all, how many Elizabeths have we forgotten? Or, worse, how many do we still allow to flourish, protected by robes, titles, and trust? In some remote convents across the world, rituals still happen. In secret. Obedience is still demanded. Without question, and silence still reigns. To remember Elizabeth is not to glorify her. It is to confront a truth. We often hide from that evil does not always come with horns. Sometimes it wears a veil, holds a rosary, whispers Scripture. Perhaps she believed what she was doing was right. Perhaps that's what makes it most terrifying. Because if one woman could twist faith into torture, how many more could do the same? History is filled with monsters. But the ones cloaked in holiness, they are the hardest to see and the hardest to stop. Elizabeth's chapel is now a ruin. Yet some say the stones still bleed on cold nights. That the weeping returns with the fog. That the bells toll without wind. And deep in the crypt, where chains once hung and prayers turn to screams, there's a chill that never leaves, a presence that never fades. So if you ever visit Saint Egidia, do not speak her name. Do not kneel. And for God's sake, do not listen when someone whispers behind you. Confess. Because Elizabeth of Paladin may be gone, but her gospel of pain still echoes. And if we do not remember, if we do not speak, then history will kneel again and the veil will never lift.